Okay, welcome to the Film Gamer Podcast, Season 3, Episode 13. I still don't know how long I'm going to have this season go for, because 13 is a really nice amount of episodes for a season. Hannibal was that long. Although the OC did run for 27 episodes in its first season, so we'll see how it goes. I think I'll end at the end of Oscar season, maybe. Maybe I'll end at the end of the Emmy eligibility. Who knows? Who knows? We'll see how, maybe it's like Days of Our Lives or a soap opera. It doesn't matter who's paying attention. Nobody but me, and me barely, because, well, I have to check what episode number it is before I start the next episode every time I record it. So moving on. Dune Part Two is the big story this week. And one thing that I found really weird about how people were, there were a lot of things about how film Twitter and whatnot were looking at Dune, but what I found weird was that I have wanted to compare Denis Villeneuve and Christopher Nolan for a long time. They make similar movies, these adult four-quadrant thrillers that are big successes. Christopher Nolan in America has had a longer tail of success. Denis, of course, made 4 Canadian movies: Maelstrom, August 32nd on Earth, Polytechnic, and Incendies. And those often get ignored, as you will see. People count his career from when he started making American films as if the others don't count. But anyways, I digress. The point is that the receipts came in this weekend, and Dune Part 2 made $82.5 million. And Oppenheimer made $82.4 million. And the major accounts that unfortunately we'll have to respond to on Twitter are film updates and discussing film. And both in their estimates were like, oh, Dune 2 falls just short of Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer, extraordinary, or Dune 2 nearly matches or makes about the same. And the actuals were already in that by that time. Dune Part 2 made $100,000 more. So it's kind of, I get a sense of a bit of protectionism against Christopher Nolan. There's kind of a thread or something, because, they've claimed him, and doing so, acknowledging the numbers of 100,000 more is somehow traitorous to Nolan. I don't know. It's weird to me, because frankly, I think Dune Part 2 is a 3 out of 5 star movie. I liked Part 1 better, but I have no problem acknowledging the math that it opened higher. And somebody on Twitter was like, oh, it's kind of wild that it did it without Barbenheimer. It didn't have, Kung Fu Panda or anything to aggressively go against. And I just kind of find that weird, because, when you have a direct competition, it actually hurts your movie. So Dune had all the help it could get with weeks of 2 weeks of Bob Marley and nothing. So anyways, I think it's going to make as much as Oppenheimer? No. I don't think it's as watchable. But we don't have to get into that. If you're interested in my review, which actually came along pretty quickly, it's on Letterboxd this week. I might translate it to filmgamer.com, where you can look for it there, but my Letterboxd review is the main thing that you can look at, and that is Film Gamer on there, so follow that. The tie-ins that was a major part of my review analysis was just kind of how fascinating it is that, on TikTok, you can look at a video of a flight simulator of the ornithopter from Dune, and advertisements for Dune Awakenings. And I just kind of find it funny how the way that media is pushed to us in this new media age, you understand bits about the world that you're being sold to kind of out of order. So, last year with people being introduced to Megan through her weird dance, and then it kind of got on a camp thing. It's just kind of funny how it's there's one tiny hook of a small thing in a movie that ends up, setting the world on fire with excitement and awareness. So, it's just kind of funny where we're at this stage in media. But anyways, moving on. The first reviews for Kung Fu Panda came out. It's the new movie that opens this weekend, and Mike Mitchell directed it. He previously did a lot of animated work. He did, the Lego Movie 2. Um, and he also did the first Trolls, which was musically, by the way, brilliant. And Trek 4, which is better than Trek 3. He also did stuff like Surviving Christmas and Sky High, which, and hey, he also did Deuce Bigelow, Male Gigolo. You see, that's a good. I enjoy that movie, honestly. It's kind of weird. I get him confused with Mike Newell, but we don't have to get into that. Anyway, the reviews are out for it, and they're solid. About, like 74%, 81% now on Rotten Tomatoes. And they say that it's good, and that it's solid, and they had something there, and there's nothing to complain about. It's like, you go in, you're out, it's a good time. But coming after the trilogy, which, by the way, the third Kung Fu Panda, which I saw for the first time last year along with the second, which I didn't think would be as good, but was solid, with Gary Oldman as the peacock. And then in this one, number 3, it was something more spiritual. I think it was Viola Davis who was the chameleon, who was the bad guy, and Bryan Cranston was Poe's dad and stuff. Anyway, that ended up spiritually rounding out the trilogy really well. So 4 had room to be like kind of like a soft reboot. And I got it wrong, by the way. Viola Davis is the chameleon in the 4th one. I don't know who I was thinking of, but anyways, I digress. They had something there going by the reviews, and it's okay. Apparently it misses a few opportunities, and everybody's like, don't listen to the negative reviews, and I'm just kind of like, I get that there are a lot of people who just want to enjoy things and all that, but like, can we point out when something, even though it's good, doesn't quite cut the mustard without it seeming like we're being negative? Because, like, Dune Part 2 and Oppenheimer, again, it's like, which one's better? Oppenheimer. But people are like, oh, they're two completely different things. How can you compare them? Because it's fun. That's the answer. It's because it's fun is why we compare them. And by the way, the thing that I couldn't think of was J.K. Simmons as Kai was the bad guy in the last one. But anyways, I digress yet again. I'm trying to digress a bit less. So moving on. Most of how I consume a lot of media these days, I'm not proud to admit it, is TikTok. So I've been hearing this 1980s car commercial song in my head because that's, I guess, sadly, where I first heard it or first realized it. And it's the same song that was used for the advertisement of Love Lies Bleeding, which is kind of like a retro 80s vibe kind of exploitation film about a female bodybuilder, and there's some crime, and they say lust and violence collide to powerfully pulpy effect in Love Lies Bleeding, a well-acted addition to writer-director Rose Glass's growing body of exceptional work. 91% on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, I know Rotten Tomatoes is like not good, and I know it's not good because I remember when Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist came out and got good reviews, and I watched it. It wasn't that good. I'm like, oh, Rotten Tomatoes isn't great. So that was like around 2011, maybe, and or it could have been like 2007, or 2008, or even 2006. I don't know. Now I have to look it up because I'm bothered by it. It is 2008. I was right. So, anyways, I knew back in 2008 that Rotten Tomatoes wasn't all that, but people kind of get hung up on it. The thing that's important, especially with a movie like Love Lies Bleeding, is Rose Glass's previous movie was Saint Maud, and that got a really high Rotten Tomatoes rating, not as high audience popcorn rating. And that's the thing with these kind of art house thrillers and stuff, is that, they impress critics, but people who actually like enjoy movies and don't get paid to watch them, like me, even though I would very much like to be like an official quote-unquote critic, we enjoy movies for fun because we use them in our pastime. We don't get paid to watch them, so that's just like fundamentally a different thing. Anyways, so I wonder, it looks okay, kind of weirdly like new, but I've seen it before, so I'll have to see if it's actually a good movie, because I'm sure regardless of how it performs, people are like, more people need to see this new, fresh, original thing. And it's like, okay, well, is it like any movie that I've seen before? And it's like, well, it's a cool throwback and this and that. Well, then it's not very original, is it? So we're just going to have to wait and see. I'm interested. I like Ed Harris. Kristen Stewart is somebody who I like more and more as time goes by. And the funny thing about Katie M. O'Brien, who is new, is that she might have been in Ant-Man and the Wasp 3, but she looks like you know, She-Hulk, just because of the subject of bodybuilding and stuff like that, which I just kind of find funny. Yeah, anyways, apparently she has a role in Twister. So look forward to Love Lies Bleeding. It's in a limited release this weekend and goes wide in about 1,000 or so theaters the weekend after that, which is what's advertised to me on TikTok. So we'll see. Moving on, I did see Spaceman this week, and that's the new Adam Sandler space drama. I kid you not. It's from Johan Rank, who directed all episodes of Chernobyl. And yeah, I gave it 1 star. I was impressed by the special effects, because this was a movie that was, I don't know exactly when it was filmed. I remember it being announced a while ago, or although it couldn't have been too long ago, because the story or the book that it's based on is only from 7 years ago. So, anyways, and again, Colby Day, the guy who wrote it, I swear I've seen that name announced in something or other. But anyways, apparently they only filmed it in 2021. So maybe in the 2 years it seemed like there was something going on, but nonetheless, the time was well spent, because the special effects for this movie are very good. And we don't see very many great special effects now. So, I mean, that was pleasant, and it has a good cast with Isabella Rossellini and Paul Dano voicing, and the guy from Big Bang Theory, Kunal Nayyar, and Carey Mulligan. Just kind of, it feels like she's playing a similar, like, wife role that she did as Felicia Montenegro in Maestro. So it's just kind of like, oh, wife again, Carey Mulligan, I want a lead role for her, like a true lead role, because she's pretty good. She was pretty good in Promising Young Woman, and I didn't like that movie a whole lot, so she's solid. Let's find something better for Carey Mulligan, okay? Because she's also the weakest of not in her performance, but just of the women nominated for Best Actress this year. It's the role that feels, even more so than Killers of the Flower Moon, a fake lead actress role, where it's like, well, this is actually a guy's story, but we're giving the woman a lot of screen time. That's how it feels. And this movie, even though, again, great technical, has a score by Max Richter, who's very good, it's just not a good movie. It's like some dumb guy saw Solaris and then the end of Interstellar and decided to call it a day. It's not very inspired. Paul Dano is at his most punchable, even though he's an extraterrestrial spider. Adam Sandler does this weird thing, because he's supposed to be Czech or something, where he kind of goes into a bit of an accent. That's his kind of the only voice that he knows how to do. But then he kind of gives up and it goes in and out. So it's, I don't know. I found it frankly kind of weird. So yeah. Moving on, Ricky Stenicki comes out today. That's the new Peter Farrelly movie. Peter Farrelly, by the way, who has 2 Academy Awards. So I thought that there was like a comic opportunity there, because Zac Efron is coming off the best reviews of his career with The Iron Claw, which I saw and liked. Read the review on Film Gamer. But no, it's just kind of like, this is a comedy from yesteryear. Somebody hilariously said on line that it's like, this movie should go to theaters, it should open to number 4 at the box office with 6 million, and then it should go straight to the Walmart DVD bin, and that's the legacy that we are missing with this movie. So that was pretty funny, and accurate, probably. I looked at the clip that John Cena showed when he went on Jimmy Fallon, who, as he does with all of his guests, talked over them and repeatedly interrupted and wouldn't let them tell their own story. But in the clip John Cena showed, it was conceptually funny. Peter Farrelly's a funny writer, but it was so flatly lit, and I'm just so sick of like the streaming era, most of all, killing the cinematic nature of movies. People talk about how great rom-coms are of the 90s. They're not really, but they're built really well. And I mean physically built. Like the sets are there, the costumes are there, everything is there. This, you can just see with the material that people were wearing, and most importantly in the lighting, it is so flatly lit. I feel like I'm watching a movie at a dollar store when I watch it on streaming most of the time. So that's kind of annoying. It's like, come on, Peter. I mean, I know it's never really your thing, but you're an Oscar. Can't you mix it up? You're an Oscar winner, a 2-time Oscar winner. You have more Oscars, Peter Farrelly, than Martin Scorsese. Light with a little bit of mood. Okay? Or can't Zac Efron or somebody say, come on, guys, let's make it good, as Ben Affleck says. Let's make it exciting. Let's not waste it. Speaking of which, director who does not seem to have wasted his moment is Alejandro Monteverde, who directed a religious movie called Cabrini, which is basically about an Italian immigrant woman who arrives in New York City in 1889 and faces disease, crime, and poverty and stuff, and sets off on a daring mission to convince the mayor to secure housing and healthcare. So she's basically, a saint, and builds an empire of hope, according to the plot description. So the reviews are pretty good. Watching The Sound of Freedom, I didn't think the script was very good. Even the directing wasn't that great because the characters weren't that great. It was interesting that it became a hit, but this guy kind of knows how to frame, at least, and he got some good performances, particularly out of Bill Camp. So this, I'm sure, will be good. It's at 96% on Rotten Tomatoes. And yeah, that's it for the movies that are opening. Moving on, because we're kind of getting close to video. I always do theaters and then video. Bill Brasky on Twitter was talking about how Wonka was number 8 at the box office this last weekend. It made $1.7 million, and it's going to streaming on Saturday. So I'm curious in Canada, because we have Crave, not HBO directly, at least anymore, and how licenses work out. I'll be interested to see if it shows up here. My rule of thumb, if you are listening to this podcast and you work in the industry and you decide what comes out and when, do not, I repeat, do not release your movie on premium video on demand or anything until your movie has made less than $1 million at the weekend box office. Personally, I would prefer less than 100,000. That's what Christopher Nolan does. It builds anticipation, but I understand people don't want to double dip on marketing. They spend twice on marketing. They just want to double dip the other way and just market once and release twice. So that's kind of what they're doing with Wonka. They hope to pump up their streaming numbers, I guess, by releasing on a cable channel. But it will also be on streaming, at least here in Canada. So, maybe that helps them. Maybe that helps somebody. But to me, it's like lighting the rest of a small pile of money on fire. It's like, well, we've made enough money. Let's cancel it here. And that hurts attendance. I know there are people who don't look at that stuff and just wander out, like last October, and you can see that review for The Killer. That came out on Netflix a week later. And we saw it in theaters the week before, and it was great experience. But, I find that going to premium video on demand, it's like, if I see a movie for $25, I'll wait 2 weeks for it to be $6, and I don't want that opportunity. I don't want to think about it. There was a pause because I hadn't seen a movie in a while, in theaters at least, a big movie with my dad. I think it was, it might have even been with my father, something as far back as Mission Impossible, honestly. I'll have to update my movie list. But, we hadn't seen a movie in a while, and we heard that the DVD release of Dune Part 2 is going to be in May. That's like 2 months from now. The Beekeeper just came out. That was before this last weekend, the number one movie of the year was a big hit, 150 million worldwide, and in 54 days it went from release to $6.95 to rent. Okay? Doesn't that seem, like selling yourself short for a movie that made over 150 million, that had a previous blockbuster director, and, Jason Statham is a blockbuster actor who's kind of carved out his own niche, but this tapped into that because, he was coming off the Meg and people know him, and the movie is actually quite decent. I gave it 3 stars. I really enjoyed it. It's going to be my first entry on my best of 2024 list. Hopefully it doesn't stay there till the end of the year. Although Megan did. That was the funny thing about Megan. It ended up in the teens on my best of 2023 list. But as we continue, I'm just so shocked at these release patterns where they want to basically cut their own legs off. It's what's been happening in TV, where essentially these networks who had good advertising revenue and models, and it all made sense, and they basically killed and are killing their cable channels and broadcast stations to chase streaming, which they found does not make them the same amount of money and is way more expensive. And, Paramount, who honestly is the dumbest of the major companies because they killed the Paramount Network channel. This is what Yellowstone debuted on. Yellowstone, the biggest cable show of the last decade, which I wanted to see forever, but they would never do reruns. And then they finally decide to do reruns and people could see it. Ends up being a big hit, shocker, because it's well produced, has great rat-a-tat dialogue. Nobody does that better than Taylor Sheridan. And it's a big hit. Wow, shocking, surprise, surprise. If you can watch a TV show that people will like and premiere it when people are watching it, not at 7 o'clock and then 6 o'clock p.m. the next day and then all over the place. It was stupid how they have mishandled this property. And that's not even including the fact that they sold their streaming rights very, very short-sightedly to Universal and Peacock. So that's honestly why they're killing the show. And now, because of its fame, Kevin Costner has been able to make a 2-part Western that's coming out later that's totally trading off Yellowstone. But the funniest thing is that the network that this started on was a cable network that you can't watch anymore because Paramount shut it down for some reason. They never ran commercials on that channel. It was just always the same crappy Adam Carolla show where he talks about stomping on a brick and it busting in half, and that show even got sued because it was phony. And anyway, it's just the way Matt Bellany talked about this on The Town, his podcast, much better podcast than mine at present, how the mismanagement of MTV, how they play ridiculousness 24/7, nothing, no commercials, and that's lighting a pile of money on fire. They deserve to go bankrupt at the end of this month if they can't pay, because I'm sorry, Sherry Redstone, but you mismanaged. You totally mismanaged. And we'll see if you find a buyer or if they pay for pennies. But as I usually do, I digress. Stop cutting off your own nose to spite your face. Who are you benefiting when you sell your own movie short? Just do this, okay? Run a movie in theaters for 90 days. It's honestly sometimes better even when you go longer. Run a movie for 90 days in theaters and then go to premium video on demand and put it there. And then after premium video on demand, you do regular video on demand because stores are closed now. And then you do video on demand and DVD simultaneously day one because you need people to be able to rent and buy day one. I would never ever buy something directly digitally because you're not buying it. You don't own it. That's actually inaccurate, and those companies should be sued for using that language. You're buying a license. So, that's not straightforward, but hopefully somebody important loses their money on that and it becomes a big deal. But getting back on track after a movie comes out. Then, and they're starting to get wise with this, holding back the 4K release and then putting it out later when there's demand, I suppose. That's the way to do it. DVD is still around. Why? Because it's cheaper, honestly a bit faster, and less inconvenient. People are fine with it. My grandmother has a DVD player. Everybody has a DVD player. So, Blu-ray, well liked, not as good, even though there's higher resolution. That's doing okay, but not nearly the numbers that DVD did. 4K, forget it. The people are populating the forums asking, where's the 4K of this? Where's the 4K of that? One of the makers of one of these horror movies chimed in, was like, hey, I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but it's just not going to happen. It's too expensive. The audience is too low. And, most people don't care. I, for a few months ago, put in a 4K when my dad got a 4K player, and I couldn't tell the difference between that and the Blu-ray. Honestly, I can't. 65-inch 4K TV, can't tell the difference. Maybe if I squint up close, but, it doesn't matter. Good enough is good enough. But, we're talking to the people who think that IMAX isn't a gimmick, so what are you going to do? Moving on. The next thing I have on my list is the PlayStation 5 Pro rumors. Digital Foundry spoke about this, and the fact is that PlayStation 5 is expensive as it is. It's a market leader. It's not really tapped out. The Xbox is way behind. So people are developing the PlayStation 5 as the lead console platform. So introducing another hardware iteration would just split the audience a bit more. Nintendo is way behind, but they have such a massive catalog that they are taking their time because the Switch is still selling for another year before the Switch 2 comes out. So PlayStation 5 has the lead. So considering that the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox, as rich as these companies are having a hard time not only slimming down these consoles, but also reducing the price, and Xbox's case still selling at a loss, possibly the PlayStation 5 as well. There's very unlikely to be a Pro. And if it is, it's just going to be more expensive. So, that's, good for the people that get it. I don't know if I will. I still haven't gotten a PlayStation 5 because there's not enough games for it, or the Xbox. There's Alan Wake 2, which, I want to play Alan Wake, but it seems a bit weird. It doesn't look as good as the first. My brother got it. That'll be fine. He says that it was okay and he liked it, although it was a bit weird. My cousin said the same thing. Spider-Man 2 seems more of the same. Returnal seems interesting, but not my style of game. It'd be something that I would try. Then you have Astro's Playroom. That's it. Ratchet and Clank, woo. That theoretically, honestly, I believe technically could be done on PlayStation 4. Maybe they would need something like an expansion pack for it, but it could be done, in my opinion, in a limited way. It could be ported, but I'm not going to get into that. There's Nintendo Selects rumors because a lot of Nintendo games have run out of print, basically. So you can look on YouTube. Some podcasters speculate what might be a Nintendo Selects title. What's funny is I wonder how many of these will be Wii U titles, just because, that was a good portion of the Switch's catalog. Switch, by the way, which basically did so well, fantastically, because the 3DS audience, which was kind of getting smaller and smaller, came into the fold, and the Wii U back catalog came into the fold with the main console people. So they won't be able to do that trick twice. So considering they say it's going to be as powerful as a now 12-year-old console with the PS4, that sounds way too underpowered for me. Even my Nintendo standards, like the Wii wasn't a PS2, okay? Like it was just like a non-HD half step. So considering they're doing like half steps, the the Wii U was supposed to be like a half step behind the PS4, and then the Switch should kind of be like a half step or at parity with the PS4. So the Switch really should be like an Xbox One X, basically, is is how it should be. And a lot of people wish that Xbox would scale and get rid of Xbox One and do the One X. I guess that would be okay. I don't know. I mean, I'm like most people. I just hang around and get COD, and when COD no longer is there, maybe I'll be like, okay, now it's time to trade up. It sounds stupid, it sounds basic, and the COD games are no longer that good, but that's just basically what I do because I still rent from the library, and every single generation. I still have games from the Xbox 360 like Child of Eden and The Witcher 2 that I still have to play. I have Wii U games like Breath of the Wild that I still have to beat. I've even gotten more because I like punishing myself, and I think I'll play these games someday. I still do. You know, 4 in February was last month. I missed it, but I can still get there. But yeah, I have that. I have Ghost of Tsushima, which I haven't touched, which, by the way, just got a PC release announced for May that'll tie in well with the end of Shogun. Good timing, Sony. Nixxes Software is doing the port, so, they're the best in the biz. It'll be a great release for people who haven't played it, which, I mean, if you're a hardcore gamer but only game on PC, I don't believe you. And that's where I'm at there with that. Moving on, development stories. Glenn Powell is going to do a comedy television series from the writer of Loki and Doctor Strange 2 about a college quarterback whose career ends after bad behavior, who then disguises himself as the talented Chad Powers. Wow, that sounds like a Peter Farrelly movie. And, I'm one of the few people who has seen Glenn Powell's movie that he co-wrote with Richard Linklater. And it was good. It was funny. So I get the goofiness of it. It's just, come on, man. You're one of the few, like, you followed Tom Cruise onto the big screen. You were in one of the biggest movies of the year. You started your career breakthrough technically in The Dark Knight Rises. You've built your way up. Why are you doing a TV series? Like, what are you going to get out of that? You think you're going to get, like, a comedy Emmy? I guess, I get awards aren't the whole thing. And you kind of, maybe you're just really into this stuff, but it's like you were just in a 200 million worldwide movie, the most successful rom-com of the last 5 years in theaters. You have a big blockbuster coming out. Take Denzel Washington's advice, or I bet you Tom Cruise told you that. If you drink too much water, you'll drown. You want people to be missing you. You now have, after your movie, you have Hitman coming in June on Netflix, and then you have Twisters in theaters, and now you're developing like a new series which could come out, this fall or next fall. Like, just stick to movies because it cheapens you, Glenn. I'm telling you, people like you, they want it. They want a new star. They want a new Tom Cruise. He can't do this forever. Tom Holland clearly isn't going to do it because Tom Holland just kind of doesn't push himself that much. And you can kind of see that a bit with Uncharted. He wanted to take credit for opening up after COVID. And, that's true. Uncharted did, and it employed a lot of people, but it's not on Mission Impossible level, although it could be. It's just not gonna. And then on top of that, I hear rumors about him wanting to start a family. That's very nice, but it's like, dude, you of all people can be the next Tom Cruise, and none of you want to be Tom Cruise. And I'm not even talking about being Tom Cruise the way Tom Cruise does. I just want an A-level action star. He can be Nicolas Cage, even, for all I care. Okay, before he got weird. But actors these days, they want to do it. They want to get all the money, which I get, because, and this is the bitchiest first world problem ever, but wages for AAA actors have not gone up. The 20 million limit still exists. Now I understand people get like back end points and become producers and stuff, but that's why we have so few true actors who don't do animated movies, whose movies go to theaters. who aren't producers. It's basically on a list of one, and it's Denzel Washington, you know? So, um, Glenn Powell and Sydney Sweeney are looking for a new project together. Hopefully, it's another theatrical release because I don't want to see, I didn't like Set It Up. I'm in the Minority. That straight to video Netflix movie. I mean, and that was Glenn Powell's breakout for a lot of people. That's the first thing I remember seeing him in, because he's in The Dark Knight Rises for like 2 seconds. But, anyways, good luck with your career, Glenn. I mentioned Horizon and American Saga. This is basically the model of television as a theatrical experience that we've seen dabbled in a bit. There's a part 1 at the end of June, and then in August there's part 2. Kevin Costner wrote and directed. He put his own money into it. The first teaser trailer was rough because it was out of sync. This trailer looks a lot better, but it looks too cheesy, like just a hair too cheesy. There's no focus in these movies. Like, they're all in hard focus. There's no like bokeh or depth of field. It's just all there, which makes it look kind of plain. But that's just my opinion. I'm sure the reviews will come out and they'll be either nice and say, oh, it's unabashedly corny and his heart is in the right place, or it'll be Yellowstone light, or it will be a fiasco, or it might be a huge hit. Maybe he'll win over the Heartland. Who knows? But good luck, Kevin Costner. Some local 4K releases. Once Upon a Time in the West is coming out in May. People have been looking forward to that release for a while. And then we also have the return of James Cameron's releases, which we've been looking forward to for a while. We have True Lies and The Abyss finally coming to 4K. And people are really looking forward to this. A lot of James Cameron films, the Avatar films, came out on 4K. Aliens came out. Yeah, so True Lies was the one that came out at Christmas, and Aliens is coming out now, along with The Abyss. So I'll look for reviews. Next week I'll give you a bit of fill-in on how that goes. And Helldivers 2 came out, 3 million in sales, nearly. And this is the kind of AA game that people are waiting for. Like somebody described RoboCop, that recent game, as kind of a AA experience. This is kind of like that, although it crossed over. We never got a really cool Starship Troopers game, and this is basically it. It basically takes in sort of RTS strategy game, real-time strategy game, and put it into a third-person shooter, which frankly, every interesting concept in video games should have some kind of shooter knockoff. I'll say it. I'm still mad at the gaming industry for shaming XCOM, which had a really cool idea for a first-person shooter similar to BioShock and similar to Fallout, that they shamed 2K Marin into not doing because reasons. And people looked at XCOM Enemy Unknown, which is, by the way, one of the best RTSs ever done. Even I couldn't believe how good it was. Greatly enjoyed that game. People see, we were right. And it's like, no, fools, you weren't right, because we could have had another game, a different game, that was directed by Jordan Thomas, who did the Fort Frolic level in BioShock, which is one of the best levels of all time. He did BioShock 2, which is a bit unbalanced, but I quite liked and I'm fond of. It could have been something. Instead, they kind of scrubbed it, half-assed it, and then they put out the Bureau XCOM Declassified, and people were like, fine, I guess, but we'll never know what could have been, because the game toxicity, the exclusiveness, the yelling at people, it's just, it sucks, man. It just really sucks. I'm still mad thinking about it, as ridiculous as that is. Moving on, the availability of games, I just wanted to touch on. I used to get stuff through Game Pass when it was $1, which it's not, because I've used up the trial, I think, twice. Now I rent games at the library. And guess what? You should too. Go to the library. It's not just books. You can get video games there. Government money. You can ask them, hey, can you guys get this? maybe they'll answer you, maybe they won't. But, you know, a library that I was at, my local university library, I would request games. And I went back to them a couple years ago, and I found that all of the games that I requested were there, but they hadn't gotten any new games since. So it was just basically me that was requesting them the whole time, which is awesome. If the money's there to be used, why not use it? So, I wish it was used more, but rent games from the library, folks. That's the lesson. Or how do you rent games? Do you have people that you go to? Do you go to a used game shop and then trade it in right after? I did that with COD last year, but I don't like doing it because I rarely have a game on mine, and they're rarely the same price. So tell me what you do to play your games. Do you really buy a bunch of AAA games at retail? Is that what you do? If you do, good for you. Probably have a good job. And if you have a good job, ask if they're hiring. Yeah. So moving on. It's the year of the Xbox, really. We have Hellblade 2, which I'm very excited for, even though I don't even have an Xbox yet. But it's only 6 hours, and we haven't seen that much gameplay for it, so we'll see. It's kind of like a 6-hour depress fest, so hopefully it'll look good, and the combat will be just as fine, and hopefully the combat is a bit varied. I don't want them exactly to pull the same trick again, and I hope it's a AA price. I'm really bothered that there isn't a physical release, like the same with Alan Wake. It's like, come on, guys, you're like a rich studio. You can afford to do a physical release. Like, you're not indies. You're selling millions of copies. Do a physical release. It's ridiculous. So yeah, and as well today, a remaster of the Stalker games, which I've never played but I always wanted to. I'm really looking forward to Stalker 2 because it's a game that me and my buddies used to joke about. I am really looking forward to Stalker 2 in September, so it'll be nice to at least see how that performs and runs in tech ahead of time. A show that's been a bit up and down, but on the up is the Halo TV series. Check it out on Paramount Plus. I was ready to call it quits, and then the Reach episode happened, which I hope isn't the whole part of Reach that they're doing. Like, I know they're messing up the timeline and stuff, but I'd like to see more of the planet destroyed somehow, and there's only, I'm thinking, like 2 episodes left, so I don't know how they're going to do it. I wouldn't mind at this point if they stretch the arc out, because it feels like they've scratched the surface, but, it keeps me entertained. I was one of the few that was a fan of the first season. It had a complete arc to it. This one has been more up and down, but the highs have been a bit higher, so here's hoping. Conversely, Tokyo Vice, which I was watching HBO Max show with Ken Watanabe on it, yeah, I had to give it up. It was just too boring. I thought that, Baby Driver, Tony from West Side Story, himself, Ansel Elgort, was pretty decent on the series, but it's just, it literally pulls a move this season where they're like, oh, this super important thing that you're looking for, the trail has gone cold, you have to give it up. But don't worry, there are another stories. And it's like, I'm not here on your show, which is super expensive and talky, to do side quests, okay? Give me the main story, tell the story, and get out. If it's a story that doesn't demand that kind of length, then make it a mini-series. Why people thought that this show could exist as like a full-time television show is, they were mistaken. And why it got so good reviews, I don't know, because I'm kind of like over it, It's not new, it's not special, I'm bored watching this show. So I gave it up until, unless they pull a big surprise on the show and Twitter blows up about it, I'm not going to watch it again. So I just wanted to end this episode really by doing shout outs to my favorite YouTubers. Dunkey, a million viewing guy who's been working in the industry forever on YouTube, and he always does funny videos. Some of them are a bit too trolly, but, it's funny enough and has good point of view that even my brother, who's not as big into games, but again, he has a Switch which taps into that. He is really funny and likes this guy. So, Donkey, give him a shot. Video Game Donkey on YouTube. Scott the Waz I watch. He is kind of cringe, but he's like a good Nintendo guy. He did Wii U, Birth of a Death, and Downfall of a Downfall. That was like 2-hour videos. Like, they were huge videos. And he also has Scott's Stash channel. I just like the passion that he has. And he's fun, and he puts in that sort of effort. So, Scott the Waz, worth watching as well. And then for tech reviews, the main channel that I watch is Digital Foundry. They're so good at coverage right now that I'll watch, like, if it's interesting, like a technical analysis of a game I will never play, just to see where the industry is at and hear about things like rasterization and, ray tracing and, SSR, screen splice reflections, and how people use different configuration of graphics and stuff like that. And they're also good. They have a video on Cyberpunk 2077 on how to tune your desktop to get the most out of it. So it's fun because I'm not a big PC guy and they are, so it's illuminating in that sense. And then IGN, I just wanted to shout out, I've always liked IGN because they do movies and games and TV. So I've always been fascinated by that, always wanted to write for them. I'm very jealous because my grade 7 teacher's son was able to write for them, and I wasn't. So, I know people who do write for them. I've always wanted a job like that, but I've never been lucky myself. Hopefully one day I am. But I like their reviews. I've always liked their video game content. I wish Game Trailers was more of a presence, or, they'd all get, Game Trailers and Game Face and Easy Allies and Sifted. They all got back together and made a super group or something, but nonetheless, they're all doing well separately. But we need kind of like a major network of gaming stuff, because Rooster Teeth just closed down today. That's sad because I started, I didn't watch Red versus Blue. I think I saw the first episode way after, and people liked it. But, I watched their GTA Online videos, and they were having so much fun. It convinced me to get GTA Online. So, the original Let's Players, they're kind of pioneers in that genre, if you want to call it that. So, maybe because they never picked up on Twitch and stuff is why it didn't go, but they still have their podcast network. So go support Rooster Teeth podcast on there, because the industry is changing. It's kind of like they were the first of that, machinima era of like early YouTube. They're still making videos. So, changing landscape, I guess. And here I am, a podcast no one listens to, except for me. But, who knows? Maybe that will change. Tech review notice. I rented a Wi-Fi hotspot rental from the library. This is literally a box that you can get from the library. Again, your local government library has a bunch of resources that not a lot of people know about, that are free because they get government funding. They're public. And this is basically, you can take internet home with you in a box, rent it for 2 weeks. It's connected with a phone chip to phone towers and gives you data that way. If you've never had internet before and don't want to pay for it, rent this from the library. Of course, the waiting period is very long. It took me like 2 months to get it. And then when I did, it wasn't ready. The people who I wanted to set it up for, like my grandmother, they had other stuff going on, and I didn't want to say, oh, try this thing. But I hope to hook her up to, online streaming, because she's never, watched from a streaming service and stuff. And, once you can get it in, as I mentioned with the DVD player thing, once you get it in a grandmother's house and stuff, it's forever. It's reached everybody. It's maxed out. So that's what we need from our technology, to max it out and make it available to everyone, because what good is technology otherwise? So that's the end of my show. The listener response, I did get a vote on a poll a couple of weeks ago for when we reviewed Killers of the Flower Moon, which is up for 10 Oscars, and might only win Best Actress for Lily Gladstone. And, it has a shot at costumes, which I thought by Jacqueline West. I always get her and Jacqueline Duran, who's nominated for Barbie, unless I'm mixing them up. Confused, but Duran has won a bunch of times. West has not, but has been nominated a bunch of times. But I'd vote for West, even though I liked Barbie better. I just thought everything from that and the sets by Jack Fisk, who's a legend. I thought that they did a really good job technically, so they could win there. Robbie Robertson, shout out, he's a Canadian. He could possibly win for his nominated score, although I'd be shocked. John Williams could win for his nominated score, which is good for Indiana Jones, but I'd be shocked. It's going to Ludwig Göransson. But Best Actress is something that Killers of the Flower Moon could win. It would win more, but I don't think it's a very good movie. However, my poll results were, are you a Martin Scorsese fan, yes or no? And the answer is yes, to the person who voted. So thank you to the person who voted and watches our show, because I'm not the biggest Martin Scorsese fan. I like Hugo, I like The Departed, I like Cape Fear, and I like Taxi Driver. And that's kind of where it ends with me. So shout out to you for enduring that. If you want me to do Martin Scorsese episode, reach me on any social media at all, or vote in the user poll here, or leave a viewer question or something. You can reach me at Film Gamer Streaming on Facebook, and talk to me about your views or whatever you want. Really, you can comment on my YouTube, which is at FilmGamerCom. You can reach me on Twitter at FilmGamer1, or even Instagram, which I've opened up somewhat reluctantly, at FilmGamer. It's just FilmGamer on there. So if you want to hear more, it might be a week. I might take a week break. We'll see. I'm getting a nephew in my house, so that'll be fun to look after. Maybe we'll catch up on some Nintendo games, or we'll see how it goes. So anyways, toodles. Thank you so much for listening, and have a great day. Have a great March break. Have a great Easter. Have a great all of it. And I will see you at the movies and online on the servers. Take care.